We're Kyler and Cody McCormick, two brothers on a journey to pave our own path while chasing our passion.
While building our adventure filmmaking brand, The Outbound Life, we become sponsored by some of the top brands in the film and travel industries, acquired Fortune 500 clients, and have spoken on stages all across the country sharing our story.
We now invite you along on our journey as we sit down with inspiring entrepreneurs, creators, and diverse thought leaders to discuss how to live a life we consider outbound, a life where you believe your story matters and live beyond your limits.
Come along and live the outbound life.
Ladies and gentlemen, our guest here needs no introduction, but I'm going to do one because this is a podcast, and this is kind of how we do these things. So, Andy Richter is who we're talking to today. And Andy is an American actor, voice actor, writer, comedian, late-night talk show announcer. So he's best known for his role as Sidekick of Conan O'Brien on each of the host programs. We got Late Night, The Tonight Show on NBC, and Conan on TBS. And he's also been in numerous movies such as Elf, Talladega Nights, Blades of Glory, and the Madagascar franchise, along with all sorts of TV shows, American Dad, Monk, Arrested Development, the list could go on, but we got Andy here. Andy, how's it going, man?
Hey, how are you guys?
Hey, thanks for joining us.
Sure.
Andy, so something that's kind of interesting. So Kyler and I, we're both in Chicagoland area. So I'm northwest suburbs out in Barrington, Kyler's Evanston. And okay. I saw that you grew up in the northwest suburbs. Is that?
Well, I grew up in Yorkville, kind of west.
Okay, yeah. You know what? I get so accustomed to just saying northwest suburbs because it's been my life story. Right. So, okay, west, so Yorkville.
Yeah, Yorkville, and then my family's still west. They just moved a little bit north. My family's all out in kind of Geneva, Batavia.
Oh yeah.
I go to St. Charles and places like that all the time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All along, for some reason, I mean, it's all along the Fox River. Yorkville was a Fox River town, and then just kind of went straight up. But
interesting. Yeah. Well, we got Fox River right up by us as well.
Yeah.
And do you make it back to Chicago much? Is this foreign to you now?
I didn't during COVID, but I've been back twice. I came back in July, I think, just kind of because you could travel, like it was like when it kind of opened up for a second. And then I went back in August for a memorial service for somebody. And so, I mean, but it hadn't been, it'd been a year and a half since I'd gone anywhere, I think. So, but I usually am there kind of once a year, depending on just life and kids and all that stuff. So, I do find myself appreciating it more as I get older and as my kids get older. And just, it's not, and also like I'm been divorced for a couple of years now. And going back solo, it's just, it's not like it's better, but it's different.
Sure.
And so I'm going and I can stay at my sister's house and just kind of experience that without all the sort of complications and distractions and logistics thrown in of my own family being there too.
Yeah.
And, but like my kids, last year, before COVID, my kids and I went, and my daughter and I are going back for Thanksgiving. But I also too just miss how green it is. I get tired
of a little different than the California.
I get tired of dust and it's too damn hot here.
Do you have a favorite season, Andy?
Fall, definitely. Yeah.
We're creeping up on it right now as far as like it's starting to get pretty nice. One of my favorite things lately has just been like sitting on my porch. Like I'll literally do like Zoom meetings just sitting on my porch. In kind of the middle or like afternoon of the day, and it's just beautiful out. It's like getting to the leaves are starting to change color, and it just feels so relaxing.
A few years ago we were back and we stayed. It was it was a wedding party for my sister because she'd already gotten, it was her second marriage, so they just got married and then threw a party later. And we went back for the party, and it was kind of late summer, and we were staying in this real pretty hotel in Geneva, and we got to sit on a balcony and watch a thunderstorm roll in, which I hadn't.
Cool.
I hadn't done that in years, and it was just, I just appreciated it so much. And just a change in weather, is it's thrilling now living in Cal. I mean, I get spoiled by it here. I'll go back and, when I've been back in Chicago in February and there's a blizzard, I'm like, this is bullshit. Well,
get me out of
Christmas, here. I don't need to see this stuff.
Yeah. No, once Santa's come and gone, like there's no reason to be here, right?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I talked to like friends out in San Diego or something, and the idea of vacation for them, going to like Hawaii, some of these people, it's like, why would I do that?
Yeah.
It's like I pretty much have it. San Diego is like pretty great, and I do think I genuinely love the Midwest.
Yeah.
I love the seasons. Fall is my thing. It feels poetic and the air is crisp, and it just feels so, I get too excited about fall.
Yeah.
But like with you being from the Midwest and that kind of being your roots and your childhood, do you still identify as a Midwesterner?
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, how does that identity you have interact with LA culture?
Well, it's like I've kind of tried to, I end up sort of living a Midwestern life in Los Angeles, because I live in Burbank, which is a Midwestern kind of town.
Sure.
Because, and what I like, and when I started working in the film business in Chicago, so I was in show business and I was performing at night, for next to nothing. But I, during the day I was working on commercials and industrials, and at night doing shows. And there's, even when you're performing in Chicago, there's a very kind of, you got to build your own sets, and you get, I had a pickup truck. So I ended up, with everyone that had to move, and every time Sharna Helpert at Improv Olympic needed something, it was like, I think she put me on, she actually said to me once, I guess I have to stop charging you for classes since you have a pickup truck. I was like, yeah, that would probably be a good idea.
Yeah. At what point is this illegal? Right.
Yeah. So Burbank's a very low key town. It's, it's mostly, like when I worked on I lived 5 minutes from Warner Brothers.
Okay.
For most of the run of the Conan show. And now I'm like, I don't know, 12 minutes away from it. But a lot of the guys I worked with lived around me, but they were like the head of props and carpenters and guys that hung lights, like Burbank is an industry town, but it's all what they call below the line. It's all like, whereas when I first moved here, I lived on the West Side. I lived in the Palisades. And there it's all kind of agents and managers, and it was not my scene.
Oh, just a totally different vibe.
I did not like it out there at all. So, I don't go to a lot of those parties, there's just, it's a lot of, and can I say bullshit on this?
Yeah. Let's do it.
There's just so much bullshit in this town that you think when you come here at first, like, well, this is part of it and I got to do this. And when you are, some of it's unavoidable. They're part of, you don't go to school to learn how to be an actor and think 40% of what I'm going to be doing is promoting whatever I'm doing. If I become successful, I'm not just going to be acting. I'm also going to be a salesman for whatever job it is they hired for me. You don't think about that. You don't.
Yeah.
And it's not. It's a separate skill, and it's a separate thing that you're either good at it or not. And you either like it or tolerate it or you hate it.
Yeah.
And, it's no coincidence that most of the people that get really, really big, they don't do interviews anymore. They don't do press anymore because it's kind of tedious, and it's not what you got into this for.
In the beginning, were you like, oh, it's cool to live by, all these people and be at the parties? No, just always never your jam.
I always felt kind of uncomfortable with it. And like in my ex-wife and I, whenever we had to go to, we found ourselves always at these things talking to like the caterers more than we were talking to the guests. Yeah. And I don't mean to be like, oh, we're so humble, but it's just, there's just people out here that just strike me as phony. And it's just, it's just, it's a reflex reaction to a lot of of just kind of the culture here.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people that like, because if you want, you could be at a party every night. You could be you could be standing in front of cameras on a red carpet, in varying degrees. It could be like the launch of a new video game, or it could be a movie premiere. There's stuff all the time
going on.
You can hire a publicist and say, I want to go out every night. I want to get, I want to see Shutterstock, shadowed over my name 1,000 times.
Yeah, exactly. I can't access my own photos.
But most people after a while, I mean, some people are addicted to that, but most people after a while are like, no, that's not, your life becomes your life. And especially if you're relatively mentally healthy, which, I mean, there's, there you could make the case that there's like shared neuroses among everybody that does what I do for a living.
Sure.
They're all a little bit broken, but most people kind of, you calm down after a while and you don't want to do it, and it's just, I mean, and I'm at a point now where one of the things, having the Conan show end, because I was kind of off on this island with him, we had a TV show. We didn't have to worry about whether it was going to be there tomorrow, and it was there tomorrow, and everything we have an idea that day and then put it on TV that night. And I didn't have to worry about a lot of that stuff. I mean, there'd be like once or twice a year, there'd be something to do, but mostly you just kind of went and did your thing.
Yeah.
Now, that show has ended. We don't know, what's going to happen next, but I'm out in the, I'm a freelancer again. And I do feel like, I mean, I should be so lucky to have like lots of things to promote, but there is part of me that's like, oh my God, I'm going to have to do all that shit again.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what is that? I'm curious even just to kind of dive into that, because it's so interesting. I mean, obviously you've had this long ride with Conan and a bunch of interesting things kind of attached to that. Obviously Conan recently ending this year. What is that kind of like right here? Because I could imagine there's different sides of it. There's a lot.
You mean right now?
Yeah, right now. Because excitement, but also the fear of like, I mean, you're
scared shitless.
You're scared shitless. Yeah.
Good way to put it.
Well, and I had, my folks used to say to me before I went back to work for Conan, I'd be working on something and they'd say, well, how long does that last? I'd say, well, another 3 weeks. And then what? And I'd be like, I don't know, something. And they blew their minds. They're like, how do you live like that? And I was like, you just get used to it. You just get into the frame of mind where you don't think about the future. And it started in Chicago when I freelanced in film production, because I didn't have a steady gig. I didn't work for one company. I worked for a million companies, and you relied on other freelancers to hire you for the next job that came into town.
Yeah.
And so I responded well to that. I liked the change in scenery. I liked the change in, the people around you. I like the new faces, the constant change.
Yeah. A lot of stimulation. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, and it stayed fresh, and even, and you go from things that were kind of tedious and boring, because some commercials, like, especially if you're shooting a commercial that's like a bread commercial and you're on a studio and it's all tabletop, it's really
not your
dull.
life passion. Yeah.
Yes. And it's ridiculous, because you can have a scene with 25 people and they'll take an hour and a half to light it. And you can have a sandwich on a plate and it'll take 6 hours to light it, just because they're so particular about tabletop stuff.
Yeah.
And, but at any rate, it was always different. And then I got to work for the Conan show, and it was so thrilling in a way, but there did after a while become this sameness to it that I wasn't exactly built for. And it's probably one of the main reasons I left, initially, rather than just sticking around for the full ride.
Yeah. That was around like 2000 that you had been doing the Conan thing?
I was there from 93 to 2000. And, but also too, I was younger. Like now, I worked for him for 10 years this last stretch, because I'm older and I just know, like, no, this is fine. I wasn't itchy. Yeah. I was itchy when I left.
You wanted to explore. You wanted to see what's out there, what you could dream up and make. Yeah.
I I got really, I mean, I can't, I don't want to say like I got lucky, because it wasn't like I won a contest. I got a job and I did a good job at the job.
Yeah.
But one of my first jobs lasted a really long time and was terrific exposure, terrific experience, like just working with the funniest people on earth and really loving going to work most of the time, so that I was kind of like, I want to see what else I can do. I want to see if I can sort of take this good fortune and do something else with it. And it was just basic ambition too. It was basic kind of, hey, let's see what I can do. Let's see,
right.
And I did that for a number of years, and then came back to work with him because I missed working with people that I loved too. Not that I worked with a bunch of people I hated, but I knew everybody that were like, really, I mean, like, people say it's like family, and most of the time that's bullshit, but it really,
isn't that funny?
People that work on the Conan show.
It's like the standard like commercial spot that like industry.
We've done too many of those.
Like family.
That's the thing people say. We're like family. Yeah. That's what makes us unique.
We found a few, but
and also far between. A lot of times saying it's like family, it sounds like a threat.
Oh yeah, like you don't know where I come from.
A good thing.
Like I have a bad experience here, guys.
Oh, that means you're going to want to borrow money, But I just was. There's people that work on the Conan show that like they saw my kids grow up. I saw their kids grow up. People that were like fresh out of college that worked there the entire for almost 30 years. Yeah, and so. I've known these people, and I'm, there are like people there that feel like cousins,
Yeah. That's really cool.
Yeah. And so I was very happy to go back, and also happy to go back to the immediacy of strip show television. I had been in development, and in development, you write a script and then you wait 2 months for somebody to read it and give you shitty notes that are kind of.
So you got to get back to just motion. You're just like, we're on it, doing it every day.
And where I could literally do almost anything I want. I mean, I have my own limits. It's not like I'm going to, do something terrible, but like literally if I said, hey, I wrote this thing, I want to put it on the air, nobody was going to go like, no, because they trusted me. And
it's very empowering. And like, that creative,
it's
liberty.
Very, very few people ever get to enjoy it, and I got to enjoy it for years and years and years.
It's just absolutely unreal, and I can't imagine. I mean, just that environment that you're describing that you've been able to live in so long. Like, how does that rub off on you? Literally, the day job is getting to day in and day out to be able to be surrounded by some of the funniest people, arguably, on the planet. Like, what does that do to you on a personal level?
Well, early on. It's not early on. It's kind of damages your personal relationships because you're used to this. You're used to this high, you're like, and you're with all these funny people all day, especially in the early days when we worked because we were trying to keep the show on the air and we didn't know any better. And we were, constantly, like somebody, I can't even remember, but I wish I could said like, they build you a ship and they put you in it and then they break champagne on it and push you off and then immediately start firing cannons at you, which is sort of like what the early days of that show were like. And so we worked like crazy, but I would come home to my poor wife at the time and we were newlyweds and I just would have nothing left. I would just be like an empty shell and there'd be no funny left for her,
Yeah.
So you end up, the schedule got better and you learn how to kind of balance it too. Cause you're like, well, this isn't working. This is not sustainable. But it does kind of spoil you for chit chat, for like just kind of small talk with people because you're just, it's like you're enjoying the finest wine and then somebody, wants you to drink a Bartles and James and
you're like, shooting hoops with LeBron all day. And we got Dwayne Wade. And then it's like, these high schoolers. Really,
believe me, I know what a prick I sound like, but it's also because like, that's my business. That's my craft. That's my job. is being funny. And even before I had a job at it, I was very serious about it. And I was a student of it, and I paid attention to it, and it mattered to me, and I studied it. And now here's all, and I was like one of a few kids that I knew like that. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, that's my entire, peer set is, all my peers are the same pretty much. And you get used to talking shop, but our talking shop isn't, like car guys talking cars. It's making each other laugh. It's and usually making each other laugh with stuff that you could never, ever say in public. Just the darkest, ugliest,
so that's an interesting thing.
Most terrifying shit.
I feel like in comedy, I'm always perplexed by this. Like comedy, there's always the borderline, and I just don't know how you guys do it. How you play with that line of what's gonna nowadays get you canceled or be hilarious.
Yeah.
And how you have to mentally use that filter. And yet, obviously, a lot of the funniest people out there give up that filter, and they're like, well, I'll get canceled when I get canceled.
Right.
But how do you mentally play with that line just through all your conversations, knowing you probably have a microphone on you for a lot of the time?
Yeah. Well, I was never very good about that. I always just trusted that the sound guy liked me enough that they would pot down my mic while
don't put this on if
because I'd sit there and gossip with people, with guests that were on in the commercial breaks, and they'd point at my microphone, and I'd be like, who cares?
Yeah, we're probably fine.
Come on, spill your guts. As well, a lot of people are really drawn to that line, and that drawn to there's something I'm not supposed to say, so they're like they can't help but not say it. I don't have that much of that in me.
Okay.
I mean, there's definitely, I like to make sort of shocking jokes, and I mean, among comedy people, when they do sort of like let's make a really dark joke that's jaw-droppingly evil, I usually win. I'm very good at that, and I don't have a lot of, if we're in that space, I'm like, oh, you want to go gross? I can go gross. You want to go scary? I can go scary, But I never felt like on the Conan show, I want to get out there and shock people, I want the show to be good. I want the show to be funny. I don't want it to be boring, but I don't want to offend. I don't care about offending people. It's just cheap. It's like cheap heat in wrestling. It's not, you're not playing at the top of your game.
Yeah.
But like I say, there's some people who are drawn to it, and they're geniuses at it. I mean, we were just talking about Norm Macdonald, and Norm was drawn. If there was something he wasn't supposed to say, he was like a moth to flame.
Couldn't help but say it.
And it got him in trouble. And he said a lot of things that were kind of over the line.
Yeah.
And you're going to do that. And you got to take your lumps too, if that's what you're going to do, which is a lot of, these people that are like cancel culture, this and that. It's like, there's consequences. You want to talk about shit that you know is problematic. There's consequences.
Yeah.
And be funny, and you'll probably get away with it. If you're funny enough, you can say almost whatever you want. And there's plenty of people that demonstrate that, but even Sarah Silverman was somebody who said just the darkest shit in the world. And it kind of worked and she was aware of kind of the tension between kind of being, like Snow White, basically, this creature that seems like she would have a sparrow sitting on her finger singing to her, and then saying just the most jaw-dropping stuff. And even she kind of moved on from that, but she could do that because she was like an artist in that area. And there's a lot of people in comedy, especially a lot of men, a lot of white guys, who are mad that they just can't say whatever they want anymore, like their dads did, or their uncles did, or like Johnny Carson did. It's like, yep, it doesn't work like that anymore. Sorry, sorry that the game isn't rigged for you anymore.
Yeah, sorry that there's consequences, and now we're acknowledging that. I want to talk about just the insanely unique dynamic that you and Conan have. Mm-hmm. Like, I think you guys have done this better than any other late show, and it's just, I want to like dive into just what exactly you think is going on there, because from my perspective, it seems like you're perfectly comfortable with Conan running this thing, whatever. The show is called Conan, but it's like you're just sitting there armed and loaded, and it's like at the right moment, you're just ready to fire away and it hits. Like, what's going on when that happens? I just want to like understand what's happening from your perspective.
Well, first and foremost, we have our senses of humor are very similar. And we both appreciate.
How would you describe it? Your senses of humor. Like, how do you define that?
Absurd.
Yeah.
Subversive. Pins into balloons. Okay. Yeah. And silly and happy. Like just trying to find fun in everything. I still to this day. There are, you meet people and they don't seem to be interested in having fun. And I just, like you sit down at a business meeting or something and you want to just kind of joke around a little bit. And there's people like, no, I'm not into that. And it's like, oh my, what the, like, why? And I still put I want to have fun all the time. I just want to goof around. I want to crack jokes. I want to, say silly stuff all the time. Like I can't imagine not wanting to. And I've worked on shows where there were people that ran it that were kind of like, come on, guys, quit screwing around. We got to write comedy, and it's like,
and you're like,
what the
hold
fuck
on,
are you talking about?
I need to come up with a couple lines here. I got to play around a little.
Well, that's kind of like, that strikes me as like life coaching is such a big thing, but how many life coaches are just like, they're living in their parents' basement. And they're like, we're going to tell you how to live your life. I'm basically Tony Robbins.
Yeah. Do as I say, not as I do, because it's not so good. But so, we have a similar sense of humor. And we hit it off right off the bat. Just being silly and stupid. We met for lunch and he also, like, I appreciate him and he appreciates me. Like, we met at it, and I've told this story a million times, so excuse me, listeners, if you've heard this, but we met through Robert Smigel, who was the original head writer on the show, who knew both of us. And he had worked with Conan on SNL and in different capacities, even a live show. They'd done a live show together. And when Conan got the job, Robert came along as the head writer, and Robert got in touch with me and said, you want to meet this guy Conan and maybe be a writer on the show? And of course, and I was in LA at the time, and Conan, we met at Junior's Deli on Westwood Boulevard, which is no longer there. Just a typical LA Jewish deli. And Conan ordered a can of Coke, and I was like, this guy's paying, I'm going to eat something. So I got a bowl of borscht and a knish, which is, just typical, but he couldn't believe like that I was eating this cold purple soup. And when they brought the knish, do you guys know what a knish is?
No, I do not. No idea. Please elaborate.
It's basically a packet food. It's like a burrito or an egg roll. It's okay. But it's usually potatoes. It can be potatoes and different things mixed in, but it's basically potatoes wrapped in dough. Okay. Like kind of like a fist of potatoes with dough around it, with like a pancake wrapped around it.
Sounds good. Sounds good to me.
Oh, it's delicious. And but the way that they made them there is that it was like wrapped in dough and then kind of gathered at the top and mashed down. So it's like a round thing with a knob on the top of it. And when they set it down, I said to Conan, who I'd been with 10 minutes, I said, oh man, it looks like a tit. And he was like so delighted that I would feel comfortable enough to make a joke that stupid. Totally. When he's analyzing my comedic chops.
Yeah, it's like you have no problem being a 12-year-old.
Yes, exactly.
I like this guy. Yeah.
And I could sense, you sense it from people like, oh, I can be myself with him. Like this is no problem. Whereas you meet other people and even comedy people where you're like, no, he's not going to get it if I'm really stupid, So that was the first thing. And then the second thing was just that, like, in many, many, many ways, we complement each other. And those are the ways that we're different. I mean, there's the basic sort of physicality of skinny and fatty is like, and I'm not minimizing that. Like, that's like,
sure.
That's, it could, it's like there's, duos where the people are different races. And it's kind of like, well, it works because they're different,
Yeah.
And then also just kind of the RPMs that we run at. He runs at a real high cycle and I don't.
Yeah.
And going into this thing, he was, the way that he deals with his nervousness is different than the way I do. I mean, I kind of like him, like, I stay low to the ground and roll with it. And he kind of, lets it all show. And
he shows up jittery, like jumping around.
Yeah. And I also too, I didn't mind being second. I didn't mind being second. There were times, I left because I wanted to see what it was like to be first.
Yeah.
And I didn't care. I can take it or leave it now. I'm thinking of projects and, I'm trying to put irons and fires and develop things. And not one of them has me as the star because I just don't care about it anymore. And I know enough about the business to be like, put some young, pretty person at the front and I'll just stay, I'll be the third or fourth character and say funny stuff. And we just sort of, he let me be me and I let him be him to a large extent. And then we just kind of grew together and trusted each other most of the time. I mean, it wasn't always perfect. And we definitely there was conflict in our relationship and there were like, we'd go through periods where we didn't get along that great, but I mean, what 30-year relationship doesn't have that,
Yeah, for sure.
There also was just like genuine affection and love for each other too.
Yeah. Well, you can tell, you can totally tell. And Andy, can you bring us back to a moment on Conan's show where maybe something went off script or maybe it went totally wrong?
Well, there's a couple that came to mind. One was one day, we'd been on the air for a few years and we were doing fine. We were sort of settled and doing pretty well. But, it was in the late 90s and there was an electrical fire at Rockefeller Center that happened because Rockefeller Center is, it's like a giant AV system. There are wires and cables and there are floors that you go on and they have exposed beams. And they're not
like
beams,
in the ceilings.
Like girders. Yeah. And it's just cables.
Yeah.
It's, literally 100,000 cables running.
Yeah.
And one of those channels, a fire started and it burned out a bunch of cables. You could smell it in the building. There was smoke. I don't think anybody was really in danger, but there was smoke and you could smell that electrical kind of smell.
Interesting.
And it happened during the day. We were there and it happened in the morning and we had to evacuate, but then they're like, it's okay, you can come back in, but nothing works like inside the building. So we didn't know what to do. So we went outside and and it was fall. It was kind of chilly. We went outside and did the show out kind of by where the ice skating rink is.
Okay.
Oh, really? And Samuel L. Jackson was our guest and we just did everything outside. And then the next day, the building across the street where the Today Show was, they had got their power up. So the next night we went over there and he and I both wore like matching sweater vests and played it like we were on a morning show.
Gotcha. I love it.
So it was like, and it's fun to do that. And the shows are usually better that way. Like I always felt like our show was best when it got to be about something other than just, it's a Wednesday and here's Conan and Andy. Like
just when the usual conversation. Yeah.
Like when we would go on the road somewhere, even if it was somewhere that wasn't like super thrilling, at least it was like, we're here in,
this
Dallas.
Experience.
Yeah, we're here in Dallas. So this is about us being in Dallas. And it's just more interesting and we're just sharper and there's new things to notice and it's just kind of easier to be funny. The kind of more disastrous one, because the shows that were outside were fun. They were kind of sloppy and everything, but they were fun.
But fun, yeah.
We had we did kind of very experimental things earlier in the show. And one of the things we did is that we decided we would do a show to an audience of children. I mean, like no older than 11.
Okay.
Like 8 to 11 was probably.
So does the filter come in at this point or no?
No. Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, because we took it as a challenge. Like, can we entertain adults and a room full of 8 to 11-year-olds?
Way different audience.
It was a room full of 8 to. We filled our studio with children.
That is so fun.
And we had these ideas like, wouldn't it be funny? You know, we had, I can't remember who the first guest was, but where it was like somebody that would probably entertain the kids. But then we had like an economist on. Because we thought like, oh, wouldn't that be funny to have an economist in front of kids? And we found out it wasn't that funny. It was actually just sweaty and nervous. And these kids did not give a shit, nor should they have given a shit. Yeah. And that show is not good. It was like, oh man, it was a failed experiment. And we had a hard time, you know, it was hard to kind of grin and bear it and struggle through. We were very happy to have that show over with.
Yeah. So how do you work through like a moment like that where, okay, you have an audience and you're just not connecting with them. Like this is not going well. How do you handle that stress or anxiety of like, have you done it enough that you can just bear it and get through it and you're like, I don't care? Or do you really care?
That's well, for me, I can only speak for me personally. That's very much it. You're there enough. With repetition, you get to where you can just kind of withdraw into your own little cone, you know, I mean, with varying degrees of success. You know, like I find too, because I have terrible ADD, but when I have to focus, I can hyper focus. Like I always, you know, I haven't done it in a long time, but I used to play golf in a lot of charity tournaments. Yeah. And some of them were kind of big deal. And I like whenever I'd have to play golf on camera, I do pretty well because I was like, oh shit, this matters.
It's a hard thing to turn on there.
Yeah. And I could just kind of like,
that's impressive.
Yeah. But I mean, I don't think I could sustain it. You know, I couldn't I don't think just because I was on camera, I could, you know, be a scratch golfer. Sure. But it was something that, I mean, it was enough that I noticed it, that I was like, oh my God, I'm, you know, cause I was still kind of nervous, but I'd be like, oh man, I calmed. It was calm. I got in myself and kind of just
like, get in the zone.
Yeah. And that's kind of a performance thing too. I mean, and for me too, it's very much based on the room, the environment, kind of. Because I'll go do a live show for 70 people, and if there's a newish kind of, you know, like some kind of angle to it that's new, or it's a room I haven't been in, I'll be more nervous there than I would be if I was a guest on somebody else's talk show. Got it. And that's just because it's new and different, and I don't. It's not as comfortable. I can't kind of just, I can't just like, oh, this room and this crowd. I can't just like forget about them. I'm aware of them. But also too, when you do a nightly show like that, and it was something that I would say to people all the time when I would find that they often would over worry about what the studio audience would do. And I would try to remind people they're like this much, and I'm putting my fingers very close together. Yeah. The audience is at home. Like, who cares what, if these people who a lot of them wanted to see a TV show, you know, they're going to
laugh when you put the sign up. They'll clap when you,
they're here to see TV. They're here to see the cameras. A lot of them aren't even particularly familiar with us. So you can't put your stock in them, and you can't take your self-worth and put it in their lap. It's like, these people don't know me. So I'm just gonna, and also the audience at home didn't hear, you know, you can always.
Laughing probably sounds like laughing. They probably had no idea it was like quiet laughing.
So if you act like you're not like you're killing, but if you're acting like everything's okay, it'll be okay, you know? And I think too, that studio audience is gonna feel better and enjoy themselves more if you're not, they're sweating and going like, oh my God, I'm dying.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like, it's like anything. You do it enough that you're just kind of like, okay, you
can find comfort and control in knowing that you've succeeded many times in the past.
And if you have a sort of a core confidence in your ability to do the thing, if there's some wrinkle that throws in, like if you're a chef and they want you to go cook in the middle of a field and it starts to rain, you can't be mad at yourself because it's raining, right. And that the food gets ruined. You're like, look, I can cook. It's not my fault it's raining.
Right,
you can have a good sense of what you're responsible for and what's out of your control.
Yeah. There's a lot to unpack there. And I really love that Samuel L. Jackson story as far as, things went wrong. We had to pivot. But you're talking about there's kind of just this excitement in the air that wouldn't have been there if we just went, based off the script of what was planned. And it makes me think of another comedian who I know you and Conan know, who had a show on TBS, Pete Holmes.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I love Pete Holmes. And one of the mantras that he has is, whatever happens is the show.
Yeah.
And I just love that. I love that idea of you might fall on your face. And if you fall on your face, a lot more interesting to embrace that and maybe make a joke out of it. Or maybe this becomes some great story. Me falling on my face is the show right now. Leaning into that. And is anything interesting going to come because of it?
Well, yeah, absolutely. Especially with a show that like part of its main feature is that it's spontaneous,
right.
Is that, and that was always something that it was something that evolved over the years. Because when we started out, we didn't really have a philosophy of the late night show other than just make it funny and stay on the air. And what if we did puppets? Yeah, let's try puppets. What if we did claymation? Yeah, let's do claymation. What if we had a ghost come in? Yeah, let's have a ghost come in.
Right.
So we did a lot of absurd, crazy stuff. Audiences, characters coming out of the audience, running out of the studio and going somewhere else. And that was great. And we did that. And that, it was, for a lot of comedy people, it was important stuff. I hear, now how many young comedy people were like, it was so thrilling how much weird shit you guys did.
Yeah.
Right.
But then as we got older and we didn't have to kill ourselves as much and, work, around the clock at times to make a daily comedy show, I started to really be aware of what that kind of show, what a late night talk show is. And what I wanted it to be was people are tuning in to see these two guys, Conan and Andy. They know Conan and Andy. And Conan and Andy are pretty much themselves. It's not like there wasn't like we weren't like playing some persona or anything. It was kind of us, two guys that are friends and care about each other and partners in this thing. And I'm going to go watch them experience being in this room in Burbank for an hour.
Yeah.
And it had to just be about that. It had to just be about what happens, if the cow poops on the floor, which is like always comedy gold anyway. But, it's like, you got to roll with it and you got to, and you can't sweat, oh no, this wasn't supposed to happen or this doesn't look professional, because that's not what people want to see anyway. They want to see you experiencing whatever you're experiencing.
Right.
They want to observe you in a realistic, truthful way for whatever time you're on in front of them.
So you guys are like these little guinea pigs in the TV box, and they're
sure,
like something's
like
coming in,
animals.
Exactly.
Like
sorry to compare you to
that's all right. No,
but
you're watching, you're eavesdropping. It's voyeuristic, not in like a dirty way, but it's like I'm gonna see what it's like when Will Ferrell sits between Andy Richter and Conan O'Brien. And I'm going to get to, because what you would see on our show is not that much different. Like in that particular instance, it's not much different than it is off camera, you know?
Interesting. So, and actually that's an interesting note. Like Will Ferrell's someone that comes up many times throughout your story and your career. You've done many films, and you know, I think of Elf specifically. Elf is literally like my family's favorite Christmas movie. We just we crack up, you know, laughing every time we watch it. And I mean, Will Ferrell, there's just something about him. I'm curious from your perspective, like what makes Will Ferrell in the comedy world?
A natural God-given talent, or, you know, whomever given talent. He's blessed with a magic. And you know, a lot of people have stories about like the part they didn't get or the part they turned down. And when the movie Old School was, I was out here, and I was also, it was like shortly after I'd left the Conan show. And Andy Richter Controls the Universe was on, and it was very well received kind of by people, the audience, and they kind of fucked it up in terms of like how they scheduled it and stuff. But it had a good reputation. So I was kind of, and casting and the acquisition of talent here, it's really dumb. And it's like, they don't have a long memory. So you got to kind of be in the front of the
Got to be fresh.
Gotcha.
And so like at that time, like when I left the Conan show, I was so desired. And it wasn't because of my talent. It was because that thing has not been available. Now that thing is available. I better get that thing before someone else gets that thing.
We got to scoop that guy up.
So the movie Old School, they came to me with that part, and I don't think I ever read for it, but I was busy with other stuff. But they came to me twice, like really pushing that part. And then when the movie came out, and then the movie got made, and I was kind of like, oh, I wish I had, like, I'm not saying I would have got the part, but they did. It was more than just like, hey, we'd like you to come audition. It was like, we're really interested in him for this part. And then I saw the movie and I was like, oh, I couldn't have done that. Like I couldn't have been Will Ferrell. Like that's Will Ferrell can only be Will Ferrell. And I think I would have done a good job, but I would not have done what he did. I can't do what he does. I just, you know, there's a joy in watching him that I don't even know if he's in control. I mean, he has control over it, but I don't know if he's responsible for it. It's just something that is there.
Magic. You said the word magic. That seems to be going on.
He is. I saw him once at this fundraiser for there's a kind of literary magazine publishing house called McSweeney's. And it's kind of, you know, it's very hip. It's very kind of intellectual and brainy. It's, you know, it's like very kind of NPR tote bag people, you know, and, you know, and people with master's degrees think it's, you know, that like, it's their very funny stuff. And I mean, and it's funny, they do really funny stuff, but a lot of it is like really dense for me. And I'm like, I don't know what they're talking about. But they had a fundraiser for some sort of charitable thing that they were doing that Judd Apatow ran. And it was before anybody knew who Seth Rogen was. Seth Rogen was just this young kid that he'd found that was on Freaks and Geeks and was writing for him too. And he in fact, it was some birthday. It might've been like his 25th birthday or something. And Judd, for this fundraiser, did a tribute to Seth Rogen. The joke being, nobody knows who the hell this guy is. You know, he's like this funny young guy, but we'll get all these celebrities to come and, you know, and like I read something but Will Ferrell came and did something. And what he ended up doing was singing a duet with Dave Grohl, singing Leather and Lace, that Don Henley, Stevie Nicks duet together. You know, give me your leather, take from me my lace. But he came up, they introduced him and he came up, and it's a room full of jaded showbiz people. Came up and he said, he just went, come on, let's hear it for us. for 2 fucking minutes, making people cheer and stand up. And just the way he did it was just the funniest thing. People were just dying laughing just with him going like, come on, get up. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Let's hear it for us. And then as it's getting to its height, he goes, okay, quiet. Now we need 30 seconds of room tone. And which for people that don't know, you sometimes for editing purposes, you just need sound of nothing happening in the room. So when there's dead spots, the editor can have the sound of the room with no sound happening. And he made everybody be quiet and sit for 30 seconds. And if somebody made a noise, he started it again.
Big room tone.
Yeah. He's like, nope, we got to start again. Like 15 seconds in, somebody makes a noise like, stop, we got to start again. And he made us sit there and be quiet for 30 seconds. And then, and then invited Dave Grohl up. And it was one of the funniest things I'd ever seen in my life. And it was nothing, I couldn't have done it. I couldn't have gotten away with it, but you want to laugh at him.
You see how he has that charisma, like the power. Mm-hmm. It's like the power of understanding how humans communicate and relate, because obviously comedy is a lot of that. It's like understanding timing and building something up in a way that brings recollection from someone, and then when you pull out the punchline, it hits. And Will Ferrell in that instance understood the people he's working with. One, he's playing to the crowd. So it's like the little he's poking the hole in the balloon like you were talking about earlier, where it just like everybody's like, yep, I get that. I feel like it's rare to ever see someone be able to control a crowd like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's something there as far as some people are funny, but some people are like, I'm not talking about their actions, like they are funny. Mm-hmm. Like,
absolutely.
I've always thought with Will Ferrell, like if I could watch my dream movie, it would be a James Bond movie, James Bond played by Will Ferrell.
Yeah.
But like not a comedy.
Right.
Like he's just James Bond. Like that would be as serious as possible. That would make my entire life.
Yeah.
So Will Ferrell, he's this enigma, and you've worked on a lot of movies with him, right? Like you guys, you did Ricky Bobby and Blades of Glory, Semi-Pro, Elf, like Cody mentioned. Have you had a favorite movie to work on that was a Will Ferrell movie?
Well, in terms of the movies, Elf, I got to be in a Christmas classic. It's a Christmas classic. People are going to be watching that movie for I don't know, at least 75 years.
I literally own the DVD.
And we got it from Myers. I remember.
We weren't we didn't know that at the time. It was just another Christmas movie. But now it is. It's with Miracle on 34th Street, and It's a Wonderful Life. It is going to be like on a short list of movies you got to watch every Christmas, so that one definitely. And it's also, I think it's just a really sweet, funny movie. And like Talladega Nights is funny, but it's, it's like some parts are better than others. And Semi-Pro is the best experiences were Semi-Pro and Talladega Nights, just in terms, because I got to hang out all day with funniest people in the world. I got to hang out all day in Talladega. I stayed in the same hotel with Jack McBrayer, and Jack McBrayer and I were like, pals for 2 months, and both of us shocked and stunned about how little of the movie we were actually in, And then, in Semi-Pro, Will Arnett's one of my best friends, and I got to work. I got to hang out with him for a couple of months, and Andy Daly, who plays the announcer, like kind of the play-by-play guy. He is one of the funniest people on earth. I mean, he's another guy that I've seen in rooms do nothing and just people are melting with laughter. And he's not doing much of anything at all. And you're just like, you can't even describe he kind of said, he sort of like started jokes and never got to a punchline. And you're like, oh, okay. But it's the funniest thing you've ever seen. So I got to work with Andy Daly, and Matt Walsh was in that. And, and then it's fun too. It's like that movie working with Andre 3000 and Woody Harrelson, and you know,
that's ridiculous.
It was a good group, and it was a good scene. And the movie, you know, it's a very enjoyable movie, but it's, you know, it's not perfect.
Yeah. So like you're describing a lot of these, like, I guess, moments on production that you enjoy, and a lot of it is being around the people that you enjoy hanging out with, because there's a charisma there. There's a, you know, the bonding and just that experience. What, I guess then in your, you know, you've had many different roles through the years in showbiz, but what is a part of your job that maybe you don't like, or you actually like hate, but you like have to do it? And maybe it's appearances, and you're kind of noting on that. But yeah, I'm curious in just like the practical way, even like you write a lot, like do you enjoy sitting with a pen and paper, or is that painful?
No, I'm terrible. I all of my good writing happens in a room where there's other people. I mean, I've written things by myself, but it is really hard for me. It's really, I just can't. An empty page to me is I am stymied. Yeah. But if you give me an assignment, I can do it. Like if you say this is a dentist's office on a spaceship, I'm like, okay, I can start with that. But if you told me, well, give me whatever you want, whatever you got, and I'll be like, I don't.
So if you have like a good box to play inside, you're like that's a good start. I need that structure.
You need Miles Finch's notebook to start with.
I mean, that's just like I go back and forth, and it's been a lifelong thing with me, like, because that's just, you know, I got into improv. I didn't get into stand-up. Yeah. I got into improv. I wanted to be on stage with other people. Being the sole focus of something, I actually am not that thrilled with it. I don't enjoy it the way other people enjoy it or live for it. And I like collaborating. I like I like making decisions and people doing what I want.
Don't we all?
You know, I like when somebody says like, well, what should we do here? And I say, I think we should do this. And everyone goes, okay, let's do that. Yeah. I like that. But and it would be great. It would be great if I could borrow some of the self-directedness that so many of my friends have, so many people that I've been around have. But I just, you know, left to my own devices, I kind of like, you know, my daughter and I'll go to a Japanese grocery store before I'll write it, you know, and just hang out for an hour rather than for me to be like, I got this screenplay, I got to get on the page. You know, I'm kind of like, you know, I said once to Jeff Ross, our executive producer, I said something about, and this was years ago, I said, if I won the lottery, I said, you may never see me again. And he's like, right. And I said, no, seriously. If I won the lottery, you might not see me again. Yeah. And I still kind of feel that way. I mean, I think I could go somewhere and make oak benches and be fine. You know, I mean, as long as I had good people to talk to and be around. But I don't know whether I should just submit myself and be like, look, this is the way I work. Yeah. I work best when I'm given an assignment. I work best in a vehicle that somebody else made, or whether I should still, because, you know, like that does get to a kind of a basic difference of where like you get to be you know, what side of the checks you sign your name on, whether you sign them on the front or whether you sign them on the back. Yeah. And, you know, in the kind of way, if I just am kind of part of things, I'm always going to be signing the check on the back, not on the front. And, you know, I mean, and that's like real high class problems, and it's not even really a problem, but it is like something that, you know, you got agents and managers that are kind of like, well, you know, how about you start something that we make some big money on, you know?
Yeah. Well, that constant pressure, I mean, like, I think Kyler and I were talking about this the other day on, you know, in our line of work, like we're in production and storytelling, and, you know, a lot in the commercial realm. And like we just did our first TV show this year, which was a big goal for us, and where we were co-directing. But I think like for us, we're in that cycle of, with our business, you know, we're landing clients, and Sometimes we'll get big projects, sometimes small. And when you're in the heat of like this big project that's ongoing, you feel like, okay, well, once I just get to the end of that, I'm going to like have a break, or like I've made it, you know, and you're like, I've earned a break, and like we can bask in this, be able to relax. And it's never that way. Mm-mm. You're always like, okay, one day into being done with it, and you're like, okay, I need to have something else coming big or bigger. And I'm curious then, translate that to your life. You're living again in the showbiz realm where, you know, these are big movies, these are big shows you're working on. And what does that feel like then? You know, I mean, you make the joke almost of like retiring, you know, why not move to the countryside and do it? Like, is there that constant pressure of like, I need to?
Well, yeah, I mean, I can't afford to. I mean, I had a really nice life on the Conan show, and I made a really good living, but it's not like the kind of go and live in the country kind of living. You know, I mean, and so, you know, and I mean, I got kids in school, you know, that I gotta work. I gotta make money. I'm like anybody else. Yeah. And that's why I say the people that get to do that stuff are the people that own things. Like that, like when you see executive producer in front of their names, and then they got, you know, I mean, there's these famous stories about people, you know, directors that were complete jerks who direct the first pilot episode of some crappy series that runs 8 seasons, and they don't ever have to work again in their life because guild rules say you get a percentage of whatever that show is if you direct the pilot. Right. I mean, at least that's what it used to be. Everything's a little bit different now. Yeah. But I mean, I honestly, at this point in my life, I don't, and a lot of that is because of COVID. I don't know what's next. Yeah. And I've been through a ton of changes. There's the divorce. There's, you know, me living on my own, and my son going away to college, and the Conan, you know, and then the Conan show ending. But, you know, COVID, I've been, you know, I live in a little 3-bedroom house in Burbank, California, with a big dog, and, you know, and my kids part-time, most of the, you know, a lot of the time. And I have a hard time picturing what my life outside of that'll be. Yeah. Because, you know, it was going to the Conan show, going to Warner Brothers and doing it there. And then it became going and doing it in, you know, with 6 other people there in Largo at this little theater in West Hollywood. And it was that way for a year. So I honestly, the notion of like, what's the next thing for me? Is it going to be a movie? Is it going to be, you know, a show that I create? Is it going to be a show that I'm just, you know, play the uncle in, you know, I don't know. And I can't picture it. And I'm really just trying to be calm and centered and be ready for whatever the next thing is. Yeah. Because I just, I think that's the best plan for me. Yeah. You know, like that's
stay grounded right now.
Yeah. For as much as I know about me and about life, just be ready. And, you know, I mean, this time next month, I could be in Vancouver, you know, I don't know. I could,
or Chicago, right?
Yeah. Or Chicago or here, or, you know, I mean, I'm very lucky in that I do have a lot of different ways I could make money. I mean, I know you guys because we both are repped by the same company for direct and TV commercials. Right. And I've done some of that work as much as I could with my schedule. And now I have the opportunity to do more of that. Right. Yeah. And so who knows if that'll take, you know, I mean, maybe that's going to be the bulk of what I am coming up. I don't know. You know, maybe I'll sit down with somebody. I'm developing an animated show. Maybe that'll take off and that'll be the thing. I just, you know, it's kind of exciting, but it's kind of also scary. Yeah. And it's more just kind of, it's okay. Like the exciting part of it, it's just like I'm too old and too, I don't know, like to be like, whoa, the world is my oyster. I kind of like, nah, the world isn't next. It's necessary, you know, the world is fine, but it's like I can't get like oh my God, all the different opportunities, because I don't know. Yeah. It could go great. It could go okay. I don't think it's gonna. I hope it's not going to go terribly, but it could. I can't control the world, and a lot of outside forces can impact this business, and which will impact what I do and what I do in it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting even just to look at you and the many sides of your life. And what I just keep hearing again and again, it sounds like your passion is what you keep describing, like collaboration. Yes. And I think that's so amazing that you've found that sweet spot. And I know, especially in like LA and this, this ladder to fame, and everybody wants to be the star and all of that. I think it's really cool self-awareness just to hear from you about how you've accepted who you are, and you're incredibly gifted, and where that seems to come to life and flourish, it could be any number of ways. It might be this show, it might be this thing, and it sounds like you've come to this grounded state where it's a very vulnerable state right now, with a lot of challenging things. But I think it's really cool that it sounds like outside of all these things, that goal is just to like stay grounded. And that brings me to something else that I really admire about you, which is over the years, you seem to have been very vocal and unfiltered about your own mental health. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really cool that you've had just a transparency to do that. I think a lot of people hide different parts of their lives, but I'm curious on that. Is that something that you always felt comfortable with talking about, or is that something you learned to do?
Well, firstly, I have to credit my mother, because my mother was always very matter of fact about it. And when our family was going through different sort of issues and troubles, she would say, let's go to counseling. And we would go and seek professional help. And she started doing that when I was probably 12 years old. And it there was no shame to it. There was no nothing. There was like, this is a problem. We're redoing the same kind of bad stuff, or just not, just like, not bad might be even too strong, but like we're not happy doing this, and we're doing it over and over. And by us, I mean a bunch of different people in the family.
Sure.
So she made that very clear at the very beginning, and that just set a tone for me and a precedent to be not afraid to want to fix it when it was broken. And like, really cool. any more than I would go get a broken leg set, and I suffer from depression. I suffer from chemical depression. I have, since my youth. And I went through college, and I went to therapy in college, and I got out of college, and I couldn't afford any medical care. And, but I still sought out therapy to different, there's different places you can look at with sliding scales where you pay what you can afford. And when I was in Chicago, making $17,000 a year, working on film productions and doing improv at night, that's what I did. And then as soon as I got healthcare from the Conan show, I started in with therapy, and I got on antidepressants that I've been on, and I've talked to the same therapist for about 30 years now. Oh, wow. And he's in New York, and I talk to him twice a week on the phone now. And it has never not been helpful. It's never been a waste of my time. Even to this day, when I feel like I have come so far just in terms of dealing with myself and making changes, I still find it useful. I very rarely have a session and be like, nah, I just kind of listed what I've been doing. I didn't really reach any conclusions or really kind of dissect anything. And I learned how to do that process, and I learned how to talk that language. Yeah. And it's very useful, and it's very helpful. So as a result, when people would ask me about it, I didn't even think to be like, if somebody asked me, are you on any medication? I'd be like, yeah, I take a high blood pressure medication. I take antidepressants, and I take fish oil, and I take baby aspirin.
And I had eggs for breakfast, right?
Yeah, it's all like, yeah, this is all. There's nothing to be ashamed of here.
Yeah.
I even take a little Propecia if people want to know.
Oh, it's out.
And,
exclusive right here, ladies and gentlemen.
But when I started, it was, I think, mostly kind of podcasts. And there's a guy named John Moe who did a podcast called The Hilarious World of Depression, where he just kind of talked to comedians about mental health issues. And I did an episode of that, and just the face-to-face, street-level feedback that I got from people about that was just so touching and moving. And I didn't, I wasn't doing it because I'm, when I hear celebrities be like, I wanted to share my story because there's so many people out there, I want to, like, come on, buddy.
Yeah. Is it authentic?
But I did feel like this mattered. This mattered to a lot of people. I was in the Warner Brothers commissary one morning early, going to the gym, and went in there for coffee. And a guy came up and he was almost in tears, telling me how he'd suffered in silence from depression for years and years, and that me talking about it made him go to therapy and tell his parents about it. And, and I was just like, oh my God, I'm just I'm a talk show sidekick. I'm just being honest about what's going on. So, now I feel just more empowered to talk about it, and more like, because it's just dumb. It's dumb and destructive to be ashamed of it. It's dumb and destructive to make anybody feel ashamed about it.
Yeah.
It's dumb and destructive to make it a dirty secret. It's no more a dirty secret than eczema or diabetes or, a rotten tooth. It's something that needs medical care.
I feel like it's taken characters like you talking more about it to get, I feel like society, at least from my point of view, has been opening up a lot more about mental health. In the last few years, I've noticed a lot. And I think, like, for me, my mother-in-law is a counselor. So I'm, like, very close to that side of things, always having the conversation of, like, what brought her into that business and how she's helping people. And then even for myself, like Tyler, our family went through some tough stuff in the last few years. And for the first time, I started seeing a counselor last year, and it's been super helpful to have a therapist to talk with. And honestly, it's conversations of people like you that bring out the courage to be like, oh, why is this so hard to acknowledge? Like, I can make time to, go to the dentist, but I can't do this.
Or the gym. I mean, I'd rather go to the therapist any day than the gym.
But it can probably look like that on the outside of, like, oh, physical workout's the hardest, but I'm sure probably some of the mental processing is, equally as tough.
Yeah. But I mean, it's easy for me to sit here and go like, therapy, but it was a slog. It's really tough when you start dismantling bad systems that were laid on you, laid on you by the people that you came up with and that you contributed to. And it's really tough, but it's better than leaving it alone. If you're unhappy, not talking about it isn't going to make you more happy.
Right.
It's just going to probably, and talking about it, it might make you feel a little less happy, a little more unhappy for a while. But if you stick to it, if you take it seriously, if you learn how to use it, because that's the other thing about therapy is that you're not asking some stranger to tell you what to do. That stranger is going to guide you through the process of figuring it out yourself.
Yeah.
And I mean, my therapist never says to me, here's what you need to do. Sometimes he'll say, well, maybe look at it from this point of view.
Sure.
And I'm like, oh, okay. But almost always, every kind of big realization that I've ever come to has been just from the simple thing of taking all the thoughts that are churning in my head and putting them into words that come out of my mouth to a non-judgmental person.
Yeah.
And then you start to see connections, you start to make sense, you start to figure out answers. And it just is, I'm not religious, but the therapy and mental health, the medical, remediation of mental health, and that to me, that's what gives me structure. That's what gives me a sense of hope. That's what gives me a sense of progress, that there's some meaning to this, that I'm not just, kicking around, because I do feel like every day you try and get a little better. And some days are better than others. Some days are worse than others, but that's the progress to me. Like, I don't think I'm going to go to heaven, but I definitely think that when I die, I'll be better put together than I am right now.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. I mean, how you just, one, it's a thing that can be taboo. And again, we're talking about how culture is shifting in the right direction. I think this is something we're getting more vocal about, but it's still scary. And it's still something that sounds different than like going to my mechanic to get my car taken care of, which I would never second guess telling anybody.
Yeah.
But how all encompassing that is, just to like take care of your own, it's mental health. And I can't personally relate to either of you on having had a therapist myself. I haven't had a therapist, although it's something I think would be really valuable, but something that I have practiced for years that has been one of the most impactful things for me has been the practice of meditation. And so for me, even some of the language both of you were using when you were describing that, I found it interesting, because if there's one thing that I've ultimately learned from meditation, it's the practice of mindfulness, right? It's pattern recognition. It's learning to sit back objectively, kind of as this third party viewer, and you're seeing these emotions and these fears and these things that arise all day as thoughts and emotions and feelings do. And you're just calling them out. You're calling them out by name. Andy, have you ever dabbled in meditation or anything like that yourself, or not?
I have tried, but I can't say that I gave it like a real go. I've considered it. And like I say, I've tried it on my own, and it just hasn't been real successful. And I don't know whether that's because I don't respond to it or because I just have not ever done it right.
Sure. Yeah.
But you're talking about the same end with just different means. You're talking about sitting still, organizing your thoughts, and progress presenting itself, a way forward presenting itself.
Right. Absolutely. And there's a lot of ways to do it, but anyway, Andy, we could talk all day here, but we want to be sensitive of your time. And, we've just had so much fun doing this. It's been a real treat for us. But
me too. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, this has been great.
This has been really cool. But, something fun I just saw before we go. I think you just posted the other day. You were recently on Wheel of Fortune. Celebrity Wheel of Fortune?
Yeah, it's October 1st today, and it'll be on Sunday, October 3rd.
All right, that's bad news for the people listening, because I'm sure this is going to come out way later. But YouTube is a thing, guys.
Yeah. It's gotta be on demand. You'll probably hear all about it.
Your friends are going to be talking about it. You're going to know what's going on. But
it was fun. I was glad to get to do it, and it really truly was. Like, I still there's so many things. Like I always said, my favorite part of being on a talk show, because people would be like, did you like Johnny? Was Johnny Carson a hero? And I didn't give a shit about Johnny Carson. But when Johnny Carson had animals on the show, I was like, I want to hold that lion cub. I want to be there. I want to hold that snake. And I got to do that shit. That was like, whenever we had animals, I was like, yay.
Your friends for years have been saying, Andy, do you think you could be a zookeeper? Do you think that's the next movie? You're like, shut up.
Honestly, it's when I thought about alternate careers. Like I think I could, I would have loved to work with animals.
That's legit.
But I got to spin the big wheel. I got to score, not that, that's, I think the big wheel is more the Price is Right wheel, but I got to spin the wheel. And I've my whole life have been like, I bet it's fun to spin that wheel. And I got to spin the wheel.
Was it heavier or lighter than you thought?
It's not. Yeah, it's heavy. It's not easy.
It's got some weight to it.
And now because of COVID, you got to use these kind of little plastic condoms that, it's like
you put on a glove, you spray it down.
Well, no, it's like they give you this plastic thing that's like an old fashioned, like what would be on a kid's bike handle, like the plastic cover that would slide over a kid's bike handle. And you use that and kind of do it. So I think it which makes it like just a little more awkward. Yeah. But it's I've been on Jeopardy. I've done well on Jeopardy, and Jeopardy is
that's an understatement. That is an understatement.
You're a top performer here on Celebrity Jeopardy.
Well, not only that, and we are going to end this podcast, but it should be known. It should be known to the ladies and gentlemen at home that you currently have the record in Celebrity Jeopardy, like number one. Hundreds of people have been on this. You are number one on that show as far as the highest
money,
earner.
Yeah. In one episode,
it blew my mind. I was watching one of the episodes. You had it. You have it, man. You were like you were just like, I was like, oh my gosh, I've never seen. I don't watch a lot of Jeopardy, but I was like, all right, he knows a lot here. This is quite impressive. Wow, what a smart gentleman.
I have a very shallow knowledge that's very broad. Like there's like lots of shit that I know that I don't even know why I know it. Like I know, books. I know books, like a book and an author's name. And, and a lot of times, you learn kind of the tricks. You learn like the way they write the question. It's like, oh, no, they're just asking what continent this was on, and then you're just, and you can make educated guesses. But Jeopardy also, too, it's the buzzer. People talk about it, but it is, it's a very particular thing. They, there's like a countdown as Alex would read it. And then you got to set, you got to hit it just at the right time. Because if you hit too early, you're locked out for half a second, which means somebody else, one of the other people's going to get in.
So there's a lot of mechanics to it.
People are very stymied by that. Like I know the first time I played, Brian Dennehy was on and he was pissed about the buzzer. And he was pissed that he lost. But he was very pissed about the buzzer. And somehow, because I had told everybody that I had like played I'd practiced on PlayStation, this is like 1996 or something. And he's like, no, you like, that was why I did so well.
Yeah. That's why.
Which is like, sweetheart, that's a totally different thing. But the wheel is different because you got to figure out the puzzles, but you also, that you get screwed by the wheel, like you'll be doing fine, and then you'll get a bankrupt and then the next person goes and you figure it out and you're like, oh shit, I gotta hope that they both get it wrong or both bankrupt and it gets back to me. So I love playing games, and that's another thing. Another one of my skill sets now is being a goddamn game show host.
You can say that again. Yeah.
But it's cool. I mean,
I'd say like I do cartoon voices and I'm a game show host, and they're not even my main gigs. Like how crazy fun, ridiculous is that? If you told me that when I was a kid, I would have just been like, oh my God, I'm going to be the king of the world,
Yeah. Well, just that like job description is, not many people use it as their job description. Yeah. So that's pretty unique.
Somebody a few years ago told me, because I've hosted a number of game shows and none of them have really gone for very long. I've hosted a bunch of pilots, and there's one that we're taking out now that I'm, connected to, and just none of them have hit. But I've done a number, on probably 10 of them.
Oh wow!
Wow! And just a few years ago, a number of years ago, somebody told me, and they said it very matter of fact. They're like, well, yeah, when there's a new game show that goes around, like you're on the short list in town of like someone that can host a game show, which I was just like, it was like one of the most thrilling things I'd ever heard. It was like, it was like, you're up for an Oscar. I was like, wow, I have made it. They're like, yeah, you're like, top 5, of like, who can host a game show.
Wow.
You know, because you spend a lot of time thinking that the industry doesn't even know you exist. And it's like, well, they think of me as a game show host. That's something.
Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting. Well, we're gonna stay tuned, and I'm waiting for this next big game show to pop up, and it's gonna be Andy Richter.
I would love to. I don't think I'm going to be the host of Jeopardy, but you know, that was a nightmare. That an ongoing nightmare that we'll see how that gets settled. But I had so many people saying like, "Why not you to host Jeopardy?" And I would tell them like, "Well, I've posted too much liberal stuff and I've used the F word in public too many times. I don't think I'm going to be hosting Jeopardy."
Because you have Twitter. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
No, if they hired me for Jeopardy, the tweets that would come out, and they wouldn't, you know, they just be like, you know, like just raunchy or poo-poo jokes or dick jokes, you know, just they'd be like, "This is who's going to host Jeopardy?"
They're like, this is taking quite the turn.
Yeah. So.
Awesome. Oh man. Cool. Well, you know, you never know. We'll see.
You never know.
We'll see. Yeah, it could be what they're looking for. It could be.
Possibly.
Well, Andy, thank you so much for taking time with us today and sharing these stories. I think I definitely learned a lot, and I'm excited to get this out there so others can kind of listen along as well. But
thank you, Cody, and thank you, Tyler, for having me on, guys.
Yeah, thank you. All right.
All right, fellas.
Have an awesome rest of your day. Take care.
Right, thanks, guys. I'll talk to you later.
Yeah.
A few closing thoughts, guys. First, we're so grateful you took the time to listen today. It really means a lot to us to be able to share our journey with you. Second, if you got any value or inspiration from this episode, please take a minute to leave a rating or review on Apple Podcasts. Lastly, remember, your story matters. So go for it today and live the Outbound life.